and welcome to the Drum Club podcast, powered, of course, by Collision Drumsticks, the #1 drumming podcast, giving you an access all areas pass to conversations on topics that range from drumming, mindset, entrepreneurship, the music business, and so much more. Each week, we bring you an exciting discussion featuring independent and signed artists, as well as speakers, touring and award-winning drummers, and musicians, as well as experts. Be sure to hit subscribe below to keep up to date with everything: videos, new announcements, and exclusive Drum Club content. And don't forget as well to like and subscribe as well. Comment below your thoughts about our conversation today. This week on the Drum Club podcast, we are joined by drummer and Collision endorsee, Steve Tashjian. Growing up in Los Angeles, Steve has been playing drums for over 40 plus years. After taking hiatus from bands and music, starting in 2000, Steve went on to pursue a fabulous degree in physical therapy and high performance sport, and has spent the past 20 years directing sports science and medical services for professional soccer teams in the US and as well as Europe, and recently again with the Qatar team and the US team as well. So fantastic efforts there. During COVID, when the shutdown happened, which affected all of us, Steve used that year-long break to build Bomb Shelter Beat Studios, a studio built in the original fallout shelter of his mid-century Columbus, Ohio home. As an owner and creative director of Bomb Shelter Beat Studios, Steve currently supports musicians throughout his studio work and also currently plays for jazz fusion trio Outside Pedestrian, as well as other musicians and worship teams. Steve is a proud Collision endorsee and can be found across social media at Bomb Shelter Beats, as well as on his website, bombshelterbeats.com. Steve, that is probably one of the longest but most impressive resumes I've ever read so far. So good, brother. How are you today? And welcome to the club.
I'm good. You did a fantastic job. You made me sound much more impressive than I think I actually am. So well done on that. Great intro.
No,
appreciate it. And really appreciate
one thing I missed out.
Thank you, man.
Was the fact that you were incredibly humble as well. So we're going to get into all of what I covered today there. And you know, I want artists as well to really understand the direction of where we want to take this today. So I really want to split this into a few different parts. I wanted to really cover your early days, you know. So Steve, before we dive into obviously everything Bomb Shelter and everything present day, what's the context that me and the team at home need to know to understand where and how you got started as a drummer?
Yeah, honestly, you know, everybody's got an influence at one point that does it. It could be, you know, musical interest itself, a great band, a great drummer. It could be your first live show. I don't think any of that is unique to me, but you know, my brother, who's 5 years older than me, he was also a drummer. And my mom is, you know, very musically talented and has her master's in music as a classical pianist. So I'm 5 years old and I'm starting to take piano lessons with my mom, and my brother was involved in that. And then maybe a year into that or so, he had interest through seeing it at school that he wanted to start playing the drums. My parents, you know, brought a drum set into the house, and I'm on the keys and I hear him banging away like crazy. And I was like, yeah, anything my brother did, I wanted to do. You know, I was a follower in that way. Just he kind of was my idol when I was young and now. But as soon as I heard him banging away, I went in there and I eventually moved away from the keyboard and just started playing the drums. And I would watch him, and I'd listen to bands and try to play what I heard. And then my brother tells a story. I wasn't 7 years old yet, somewhere in between, you know, 5 and 7 years old. He came home and he heard me playing to something, and he was like, "Who is this?" And walked in, opened the door, and there I was on the kit. I think I was playing Motley Crue or something like that. And, and he ended up, you know, saying, "What the heck is going on here?" And it was just purely from watching him and just being totally enamored with anything my brother did. And then maybe, you know, just maybe I had a natural ear for it or something. And I sat down and, you know, wasn't playing it perfect, but I was putting together what I felt like was a rock concert in my head. And that was the start of it. And then, you know, my bros went to my mom and dad and said, you know, this is pretty cool, and ended up, you know, getting some private lessons. And then it all kind of took off from there. But it had a lot to do with seeing my brother, you know, and seeing something I'd never seen before. I'd never seen somebody behind a kit playing drums and banging on all these things before. And it really, for me, just sparked interest. And then from
That's
there, it was
fantastic.
more just enjoying the feel of what it felt like to play and create. And even at a young age, I always was blown away by, the mix of how, 5, 6, 12, 25 musicians can come together, and just listening to this blend of things that take place, and these amazing outcomes that you get from these great bands and great groups that I got to hear when I was a kid in LA. Yep.
Absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I mean, starting there, I've been in kind of music land and music
Yeah.
town, as you've already alluded to, and I did in the intro. I think you're already in a great environment, but it sounds like, again, your brother, with your brother's help and kind of being an inspiration to you at that early age, and you also having the opportunity to identify what you like, Steve, as well. But it sounds like,
Yeah.
again, kind of great bones, great family, and just kind of that, just that support network there when you need it. I mean, all too often I'm speaking to drummers on a day-to-day basis, and you hear all these different stories. Some are wholesome, and some are, having to find their own path because maybe they didn't get that support. So for those drummers out
Right.
there, Steve, that maybe aren't finding that support network, or they're struggling to, especially when they're first getting started, maybe just, almost immediately, let's drop some tips there. What advice do you have for those drummers when it comes to finding their tribe, finding, different artists to network with, or maybe even just kind of inspiration to keep them on the right track and right path?
Yeah. I would, I was definitely blessed in that, the road was so well supported by my parents. God love them. Like, that first drum set was in my bedroom. My brother and I shared a drum set in our bedroom, and they never said, I can't remember once my parents saying, stop playing the drums. And we would bang away. They had to deal with not just one, but 2 drummers in the house banging away on this thing. And so I can relate to what you're saying. I had a lot of friends that their drum set was my drum set. That I think some of it is finding a community of people that will let you use what they have. Is the beginning point is, don't spend a lot of time around people that don't support what it is that you do or who you are. I think that's it's difficult early when you're young, just because there's also that adolescent desire to be accepted and to fit in. But I think inherently, whether we know we're doing it or not, we gravitate towards people that have similar interests to us, but that have a certain attractive reaction to the way we are. And I can say something a certain way or do something that's truly authentic, and the other person on the other side can either reject that and make me feel ashamed for who I am, or they can totally accept it and make me feel amazing about who I am. And early on, I think it's definitely about connecting to people that really truly do understand who you are as a person, regardless of musicianship or what it might be. Is surrounding yourself by people that really support who you are and what you want to do. And then, as it relates to the rest, I had really close friends that ended up being incredible drummers that literally kicked boxes and buckets at their house. I'm telling you, my guys that now they're monsters. They're amazing players. And I remember, when they couldn't come over to my house to play, they were in their home and they were sitting on a bucket, 5-gallon bucket, and they would bang away with whatever they could get their hands on, knives, forks, and they just wanted to play anything. And they'd have pots and pans and cardboard boxes, whatever it might be. And rhythm is rhythm, tones are tones. And now what you see on YouTube is a bunch of people that have a drum set and they got pots and pans hanging around their kit, and they're basically doing what my friends were doing when they didn't have a drum set at all. But in the end, I think it's, mainly about connecting to people that are going to support you. And then once I started taking private lessons, man, I had a few amazing private instructors that just, believed in who I was and what I was. And some of them were at my school. They weren't individuals that I had to pay for their services. They were instructors through elementary school, middle school, and through high school that just cared about who I was and what I did. And they offered to help. And then I had the blessing of being able to participate in private lessons through, services that I had to pay for. But main thing that I felt looking back on it was that I just had a bunch of people that didn't try to make me something that I wasn't, and I think that was a big part of it.
Yeah, pushing you down kind of a road you didn't want to be pushed down, or
Yeah, for
like you
sure.
said, I think, what came to mind for me there was, hearing of your friends, and, again, it sounds like, just like your family, you've got an even equal incredible kind of friendship
Yeah,
roster. You cannot count
yeah,
on your ride or dies as you would. I know it kind of same here with me. I know
yeah,
there's 20, 30 boys I can kind of point to who had a very similar start to yourself, to me, to
yeah,
us, to not us. So, hearing these pots and pans, I think it was maybe not having the kid as well that made some of these drummers even better drummers, because it was
yeah,
the tenacious kind of attitudes, like, gosh, if I can't get this kid, or I'm being told no,
yeah,
doors are shutting, it's like, I'm going to double down and do this. I'm going to definitely pursue this, because why
yeah,
not? Why is everyone pushing us away? That doesn't always happen with people. People can get turned away quite easily, and I think drumming is a very determined kind of instrument. You've got to know you
for
want to
sure.
do it. It's not the first thing mom and dad are going to grab out of the music store, is it?
Yeah,
It's a
right.
5 piece, it's a 6 piece. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can relate to that, Steve, for sure. So it was
yeah, yeah,
just great to hear that. you
yeah,
know
yeah.
when it comes, Steve, to music education, this is something that we obviously really promote within the brand at Collision. Obviously, something we've always championed, and no two artists have the same route into music. Now, you said that you obviously kind of again attribute a lot of the success of your music to
Yeah.
you know a lot of role models, great teachers, great educators in your life. Now, what was the biggest difference that you felt that you received in terms of education when it came to the student school offered support versus the private tuition? What were kind of some of the biggest either draws to doing it? Because I would imagine it's a great foot in the door
Yeah.
stateside. I imagine it's quite similar to here in the UK and in Europe. But yeah, what was some of the similarities? What was the need to pursue private education versus what weren't you getting enough of maybe just during school? Was it time? Was it as simple as that? What was it?
I think some of it comes down to eventually somebody being able to concentrate on the the detail of what you're lacking, because they can pour all of their attention just into you. Uh, Another piece of it, it was that the the con, the group leaders, band leaders, whoever it was that was providing services to school might not have been a drummer. They just might have been somebody that was a better drummer than me at the time, but they weren't necessarily a drummer. You know what I mean? Or just somebody who was just teaching me how to be a musician. They weren't actually a drummer. And then other times the person at school was a drummer, but now they're looking after 6, 10, 12 different drummers that are at the school. And again, you end up getting some personal instruction, but then sometimes you're taking lessons in groups. And overall, I finally gravitated towards understanding. I just got better exponentially because all the attention of the individual was on me. And then they forced me to do stuff I didn't want to do, which is great. I think that's the key is, and force is the wrong word. They encouraged me to continue to understand why I needed to do those things. And my first drum teacher, amazing drum teacher, could sit down and read anything and play it. But, also say, listen, you got to learn how to play timpani. You have to learn how to play xylophone. If you're going to be a drummer and you're going to be a percussionist, like you need to be a proper musician. And that was new. I didn't have any desire or any feeling that I wanted to. My mom was classically trained, so I heard classical music in the home all the time in the house. And oddly enough, even though I kicked and screamed, once I did start, playing other more orchestral instruments, I really did enjoy them. I did, and the timpani was amazing. I dug that a lot. Just having the opportunity to just do something different that still allowed me to be a drummer, but now I'm creating things musically that are different than what you can create on the drum kit per se. And so that was interesting. And then as I got older and older, and I started to gravitate towards what I wanted to be as a drummer, some of the orchestral things fell away, and I transitioned to another teacher, another instructor. Was just able to be, he was more technically proficient as a player than my first
Mhm.
instructor. So he was able to instruct me in a more proficient way. And again, you have this moment where exponential growth, a plateau, and then another tipping point where you get more exponential growth. And he did that for me. And he's still instructor now. Great guy, Mike Packer, who's been a big part of some of the educational content on the drum channel, and did a lot of work in creating the heelless pedal for DW. That Mike Packer was the one that
Wow.
kind of drove that. And amazing guy,
Incredible.
great drummer, and really was in a place to take me from where I was and move me to a different place. But that's what it was. It was the personal instruction, it was the detail, it was the proficiency of the instructor. And even after my hiatus, 20 years away, and when I came back, I just connected with him again, maybe a little less than a year ago, and we've been taking lessons remotely, and those things stick with you. Certain people know you really well, and they can identify what you're good at, what you're not good at. They know your personality, and they can motivate you in amazing ways. So I think it's a progression. Take what you have around you that you can utilize based on the resources that you can afford, and then as soon as you can, there's never, for me, without reservation, I'd recommend taking on private instruction in a way where you can connect with somebody that can make you better, because you will grow exponentially quicker when it's all about
Super,
you.
super sound advice, Steve.
Yeah.
I think it really does pay, to get that mentorship. Some people feel when they feel it best. Some people feel it was good for them to be told when. Some people,
right,
still feel and take the view that they don't need it, and self-taught's the way for them. Everyone finds their way, but I definitely have to agree with everything you've said, because that was the very similar journey I shared. I'm a few years your junior, but I'm definitely looking forward to again, hearing of these 20 years later and catching up with, I'm sure he recognized your style. He was, oh, there's Steve again. He's back playing it. I recognize that heel toe pattern. I recognize that beat. That's what it's all about, Steve. No, and I wanted to ask, because I'm really interested to know, talk to me about 1980s LA, the music scene. You're finding, yourself kind of grooving along, and obviously the bands are starting. So I imagine, obviously, this is where kind of you find your feet with the music, you're getting lessons. When did bands start really coming in, start coming into your life? And obviously, what were those earliest projects? And, what did you go on to do there before the hiatus?
Yeah, I think the first time I started thinking, man, I might be good enough to play with some other people here was, I started to get asked, even at 10, 11 years old, I started getting asked to do things at the middle school and high school level. And that's when I was like, it was the first time I played with other people that were, better musicians than what I was surrounded by. And I thought, man, this is different. This is something I like. And it challenged me, and it forces you to, to really take a humble position, where in other groups I might have been driving the musicality of a group, where now I'm not. Like, there's definitely people who are better on their instrument than I am on mine, and that was pretty interesting. And then as I started getting into middle school, I'm now closing on middle school, the border between middle school and high school. I'm now into the 80s, early 90s, and at that point, I'm 14ish years old. So I was limited because of my age, but I did start to now play with guys that were 17, 18 years old. And then it was, really just trying to get into the places where people would hear us. We'd play at our friends' parties, and then, you'd maybe get a coffee shop thing here, or, you'd some block party, some group of friends was putting together in cul-de-sac, and you, you'd bang away and to anybody that would listen. And then as it grew, I grew up just outside of LA, kind of Pasadena area, and it was still a bit of a drive for me to get into LA. And once I started getting into that 17, 18-year-old age, I started playing with some really talented people. And at that point, you're trying to break in. In the 90s was weird in LA. I was playing the first really big thing that I had. I felt I was playing with very, very talented musicians. There was a Japanese blues guitarist that I met through a friend. His name was Nobbie, and I still don't know his last name. He went by one name, and that was it. Never told anybody his last name that I know, anyway. And then the bass player was Wilfredo Wilson, who used to play bass for Mandrill, for the 70s funk band Mandrill. And they taught me so much, especially Will. Will was such a good player, and drummers always connect with bass players. But he was 60 years old at the time. I'm 18, and the stuff that he would stop in the middle of the song. He was like, "Nope, we're starting again." And it was always the same things you hear with young players, like play less, play less, play less, play less, play less. So that was amazing. And then we would go and try to find as many gigs as we could in LA to do what we could in bars and different music venues, but they didn't want to hear your original music. It was really, really difficult then. It was the beginning of the discouragement that drove my hiatus, to be honest. Nobbie was an amazing guitarist, but nobody wanted to hear his original stuff. So if you want to play anywhere, and that included Whiskey A Go Go and the Roxy and Viper Room and all these places, you needed to have a lot of top 40 happening in your set. And to be a blues band and a blues funk band in 1990 was not, you've got grunge going nuts. Green Day was starting to, really punch through the top 40, and I'm not sure we were in the right era. And we tried as hard as we could, and that fizzled out. And then Nobbie and I joined another group that was way more funk oriented, more like deeper Parliament funkadelic type funk oriented. And once again, like if you weren't playing top 40 stuff, it was really difficult. So I got to the point where I had even already started college at this point. I had enrolled at UC Irvine my freshman year, and at Easter break, I dropped out of college. I dropped out my freshman year because I kind of felt like I was in this weird space. I went to college. I was always a smart kid, and I went and I was, thinking sciences, medical type of stuff, and I'm in school just thinking about music while trying to study these really difficult subjects, and I didn't do well. I didn't do well my freshman year, and I was like, I got to fix something.
I can't imagine it being easy, Steve, sitting there, and your head's in music. You're trying to forge this path and this dream with incredible musicians who are twice, almost treble your age, and treble the wisdom, in all fairness. And
right.
You're trying to take as much from them as possible. You're trying to do your studies. I can imagine committing to a degree is a very daunting and difficult challenge at the best of times. You put a kid down in front of a book, it can be a difficult task anyways, present day. But back then, gosh, you couldn't imagine.
Yeah, it was a big dichotomy, Carlton. And then, but the whole reason why I did enroll, even though I'm playing and I got some good musicians around me, and I feel like if I commit to this, maybe it goes somewhere. But everything I did told me, what you want to do, nobody wants to hear it. And I'm like, what am I doing here right now? Pouring all this time, gas money and driving and late nights, and I'm pouring all this in, and here I am at 16, 17, but I could get into this great school. I've got good grades. So now all of a sudden the discouragement from what was around me at the time was now starting to push me towards something else. But then once I got there, I hadn't totally given up on this thing that I still think, even despite the time I was away, and something that I love to do. It wasn't my top passion. Music has always been my top passion. So even then, I'm in school, and I just like, now I know if I don't give it a full shot and walk away on my terms, then this is always going to tug back and forth with me. And so that's when I did drop out my freshman year and just tried to play more music.
Incredible, unbelievable. And looking back on reflection, Steve, was there anything? Because it sounds to me, hearing that, and I'm sure the artists at home watching were right there with you, hearing about all these efforts made. Every door just seems to be, a dead end, or every opportunity was like, because we hear about it a lot. These incredible stories of artists playing one show with the right person, the right time, all coming together. But it sounds like truly you were leaving no stone unturned. Was there anything, walking back through those shoes, you would have done differently? Was there any, apart from traveling to a different area, was there anything else that you think, what I could have done, should have done, would have done? Or I
ask myself that a lot, Carlton. I do. I ask myself that a lot. And maybe if you asked me in the middle of that hiatus, I might have had a different answer for you. But I've experienced some amazing things in my transition to a different career. So it's hard for me to say that I have any regrets, because I really feel like I don't. In the end, I think the natural feeling was that I gave up. The natural difficulty in my own struggle with the way my life path has gone is, I have so many friends who still they're career musicians, and they've never bought a house. They've never, it just never happened. But they would never, ever in a minute think about doing something else in their life ever. And I look at that and I was like, how did I not have that? I did not have that. And I can admit it now. Like it's hard for me to admit it, but I did give up. And that's about as transparent and truthful as I can get. I can't really paint a picture that makes it look better than what it really was. There was a moment where I was fed up, I was tired. There was another path for me, and I just gave it up. And that's probably that's probably the thing I battle with most. And thank goodness that life can come full circle, and there's avenues for me to just start to reconnect to it in that way. But that was difficult, and the only thing I could say is you just keep going and accept that your life path is going to be different. But at that moment, it wasn't a career path that excited me. I was really discouraged with what LA threw at us at that time, and I couldn't overcome the feelings of kind of hopelessness as it related to being a musician at that time. So
I really appreciate you being sincere and vulnerable with
Yeah.
it, Steve, because you could have, in 20 years, you could have come up with quite the stories to kind of, your attitude towards it. But direct honesty is what we're all about here at the Drum Club. And I
Yeah.
think, you know what, there's a lot of musicians that'll be watching today thinking, Steve, being in LA, or within the LA area, having that opportunity on your front doorstep. Right. A lot of musicians abroad or even within the country in the US would think that's you've got a God-given right to succeed. Like that is like it's not if, it's when. It's all these doors will just present themselves. But the reality is you've still got to have that perfect storm to which how many millions come and how many millions leave every year. It's one of the most transient towns in the world. We hear of these stories of people going, throwing their life in a suitcase and driving and packing their bags up and making a go of it. And
that's right.
For every one, there's 1,000 that come away, demoralized, down, tired, exhausted, all the above. So I would say, I think hearing your story, or even to this point, and I know a lot more about yourself than a lot of the artists, might recognize and know, but that's just because obviously we've had the time to really create a great relationship. But it sounds like you had to kind of give a part of music up at that time for it to step back into your life today.
Yeah, I didn't know it then. I didn't know it then, but I agree with you 100%.
Was there any part of you, Steve, that back then you thought, I will come back to this in?
Oh, 100%.
You always felt that?
Oh, 100%. So as I was going through school, because I eventually re-enrolled and had a very, very clear picture. I really enjoyed athletics, and I was in sport my whole life, and just started to develop this real love for human movement, and it became clear that that's kind of the path that I wanted to go down. So right before when I applied for physical therapy school as an undergraduate, I told my mom and dad, I said, I'm going to become a physical therapist, and I'm going to make a living so that eventually I can be a musician again. And I even said it. I said it when I was 20 years old, that was going to be the plan. It's, I didn't think it was going to take 20 years. I was hoping it would be a lot less than that, but I never stopped playing. At that point, my life was to play for joy, and it wasn't to play to support my life. And so that changed things quite a bit. But that was the path. That's other people have different stories. Other people have different paths on how they got to where they were. And I just knew at that point that it was definitely going to be a holding pattern, and we'd get back to it when we had a chance to get back to it.
I love that kind of plotting and setting your North Star, which was to return, and come back to it. And, and I think just like music, whether it takes a minute or it takes a year to write that song, it writes itself. And I think that's your story in and of itself, Steve. I wanted to just really ask a question during your hiatus, and kind of looking back and reflecting on it now. So we've reflected on kind of looking inwards and thinking forward and thinking, would this be something, music, would you return back to it? When it came to, obviously, the focus around your, it was to obviously push your livelihood forward, to drive, security, build that in, which is, again, absolute huge respect for that, because like you said, there's musicians that and I know right now that still, again, are chasing the passion and maybe not have that luxury or that kind of reality in their life. Outside of that, Steve, was there any hidden kind of benefits to stepping back, not stepping totally away, but stepping back to provide and to support your music going forward today? Were there any, kind of, either was it a different angle on things? Was it kind of removing yourself, take yourself out of the room, getting writer's block, creator's block? What was it? There must have been something.
I would say that I think I did avoid what I think happens to a lot of professional musicians, not just drummers. We start playing an instrument out of pure joy, and it really is that. I think that you'd be hard pressed to find a musician that didn't start playing the instrument because it brought them a joy that other things didn't bring them. But there is the consequence at times. Once it becomes your financial stability, it becomes the way you need to provide your livelihood, that it transitions from this joy to this job. And when your passion becomes, more of a job than your love, it can taint the whole thing. It can tarnish it. And now you almost resent the instrument. You resent the industry. You resent what it represents. And now when I look at the kit and sit down at the kit, I don't see this canvas to create or this conduit to joy. Instead, I see this like anchor that feels like a weight that's pulling me downwards. And I avoided that. I've never been in a position where the instrument itself presented resentment, in that way. I think as a musician, I did regress. I could have progressed a lot faster as a player. If I'm playing every night, and it's inherently going to delay you from that progression that you could have had if you were listening to other musicians on a regular basis and playing and subconsciously taking all of that in and just fine tuning and refining the way you can the sensitivity of what you can do because you've been listening and hearing music and playing with other people for so long. I definitely I can't but think I regressed in that. But I would say that it gave me space. It gave me space to realize that I was very, very narrow-minded in my music. I didn't listen to a ton of different genres when I was young. I expanded, and then it got to a point where I liked what I liked, and anything outside of that, I just didn't listen to it. Then maybe stepping away and not having to play anything, because you gravitate to the things that you think you're good at. And if you're playing things you're good at, you're probably listening to things you're good at. Maybe that was just me. But in the end, I did expand the genres I listened to when I stopped playing music as a profession. It was just different for me, and I do think that was something that's benefited me now in my return to it, because this is the first time I've written music. I've only been writing music for a couple of years. In the beginning of my career, I wasn't writing anything because I stopped playing piano. I didn't have the music theory, and I wasn't writing anything at the time. So I've started over again. I've got, you can see my piano to my right and my guitarist to my left. I've for a year I've been learning how to play other instruments, and now all of a sudden by ear I'm writing, but I still don't know what the hell chords I'm playing.
Doesn't matter, because you're putting pen to paper and you're moving forward. You're
Typical.
doing something that maybe the last 35 years you weren't
Exactly.
doing, and now you're doing it, Steve. So
Typical drummer writing music, right? No idea what chords he's playing. But what I'd say is that, it gave me that ability to step away. And now if I was writing music when I was younger, I'd be writing music in a very specific genre. And I still think when I sit down and I start playing, and I'm playing to write, it still ends up being very jazz, soul, blues, funk, R&B. I think that'll always be what I end up playing. But when I'm helping people write music, and they might be in a different genre, I'm contributing in a way that I couldn't contribute when I was younger, because I didn't listen to that music when I was younger. So I think there's, there were some benefits from stepping away when I did. There were some repercussions, like you said, I started with my drum teacher again, who obviously remembered me from when I was in my 20s. And as soon as I sat down, he said, "Your left hand is still shit." So yes,
oh, I
he
know
did
that
remember. He did remember me, and he remembered my groove. He remembered my pocket. He remembered the way I played, and then he still remembered my left hand is garbage. But and in the end,
right there, Steve.
and that's part of the regression, right? That's part of the regression. I could have had 20 years of proficiency that I didn't have, because I didn't sit down at the kit during that hiatus, because I needed to get better as a player. I didn't have the industry and my livelihood pushing me to get better, because I had to. And so some of that was the regression and the repercussions of that. But yeah,
I have a side question, Steve, based on that. Again, because I think as drummers, we are our single biggest critics as well, and I think we're always kind of offering a personal feedback, and there's a phrase, it escapes me right now. I'll come to think of it, but it's kind of sideline yellers. You'll have witnessed it. Everyone's a professional on the sideline, but unless you play in the game, you know better than most. What that really means and what that takes. When it came to your incredible career, within soccer, were there any individuals, or were there any was there any lessons there that you've taken from the field and applied in your music?
I think I would say the experiences influence what I'm going to write about, for sure. And the connections you make, regardless of your industry or what you do for a living, those connections are vital for our survival. We seek connection with people. We seek connections. Our souls do. Our spirits do. And a lot of the journey, in that 20 years between music, really did that for me. And I met people when I was away from sport, obviously, but I met more professional musicians, impactful musicians during my hiatus than I did as a musician. That's without a doubt. And so that was super interesting. But I also, the sport was able to take me to different countries. And that was such a huge part of, I think, my maturation as a person. But my profession was about connecting with people and understanding how to collaborate to produce high performance. That sounds like a band to me, really. And there's aspects of what I did my entire career that taught me about human behavior, that taught me about group dynamics, organizational dynamics, and then how to apply, principles from these fields to get a group of individuals to collectively align around virtues and values, and use that alignment, to just excel in an efficient way, and to perform at really high levels. And whether I was in the United States, where I started my career, or whether I was in England with Everton in my 5 years that I was with Everton, or when I came back to the States and, collectively was taken on the project with the U.S. men's national team to, we had failed to qualify in 2018. And when I came aboard with our head coach, it was, right on at the beginnings of that next cycle after we had failed to qualify. And it was a big project. There's a lot of repairing, and there's a lot of relationships that need to be mended, and reputations that needed to be fixed and repaired. So all of that, the dynamics that were required for us to be successful and get to Qatar and beyond that stage representing the U.S. men's national team, required me to use the same skills that it takes for you to be in a group of 4 to 12 people, 3 to 12 people, and collectively create and get along with each other and align around what you are, develop an identity for who you are, and produce a product, produce what you love, whether it's high performance in sport, whether it's music in a band. Like all of it were dynamics that today just give me the opportunity to understand how to connect in a collaborative way. And it was honestly, and I do say now that I can look back on it, I'm 46 years old now with a different head on my shoulders, and there's nothing to regret about the life I've had so far. And the opportunity to be where I'm at and do it this way is going to benefit from, the amazing people that I've been able to meet along the way. And when I was in the UK, man, I met some great musicians. Some of them became great friends, and some of them were just people I met once, but they influence you. Steve Barney is a great friend of mine who's played with Annie Lennox. He's played with Jeff Beck and plays with Anastasia and Mike and the Mechanics. Like he's played with, but super
Big
humble,
names.
amazing, amazing
Great drummer.
guy, great drummer. And it's those things are a blessing. I've met Ash Sohn 2 or 3 times, incredible guy, and one of my best friends is the guy is the owner of Adlib, which is a huge, gigantic, sound and visual production company, and Andy Doherty, and that's how I met Steve Barney, and Andy's the one that introduced me to Ash, and my life has taken me, through a winding road. It wasn't a straight line for sure, but all of it, connected in such a crazy way, man, that it really was, looking back on it now, and it's not because it's over. I know I'm talking like it's over, but the journey continues. But those moments, even though I didn't know it was happening at the time, was opportunities to, to connect to some really amazing people in and out of music. So yeah, but
I think it's always important to remember, Steve, when you share, incredible stories and just really thoughts, things aren't happening to us, they're happening for us. It's getting us to, a different viewpoint. It's getting us to, perspective, or it's getting us to a different, interaction or connection, next new connection, So I think, again, it just shapes you for the better. I think that there's so many different benefits to take from your experience, working within high performance, within soccer. And, you took the team, and the team, did incredible, absolutely fantastic, going to do even better next time around, and like you were saying, to not even qualified, to get to where they did, unbelievable. And I really appreciate the distinction that you make between team and band setting, because a band is a team, like you said. The two are, two might as well be interconnecting or interchangeable, because they really are. I always, say that on the phones. Whenever I'm on the phone, I see, it's a team sport. Music is a team sport. You're only as good as the next artist to your left, to your right, and that's the stage that you're on. Just because you're not on a soccer field does not mean you're not on a field. You are playing a game, and you're playing the game of music. No, I think it's incredible, Steve. Talk to me, Steve, about the first show back. When you came back, after this hiatus, who were you working with, and how did we get to where we are today? Because I know COVID really changed your entire position and perspective, and created what now has been this incredible opportunity to launch the studio. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and I think it does divide itself a little bit, because even during this hiatus, I do consider myself fairly rooted in a lot of gospel, and I've played in church a lot as a gospel drummer. So I was on stage enough throughout the hiatus, as it related just worship services and whatever it might be, that I was familiar with the stage. What was really different was really the first thing back, if we're going to, put it in quotes, was during COVID. I've now started the bomb shelter, and I can record music, which I'd never been able to do before. And I was able to remotely, lay things down for friends and whatever it might be. But it was the first virtual performance I had ever done. That was probably the story that's most relevant to your question. And I hadn't played with the Outside Pedestrian guys for almost 20 years. When I left to go into high performance, we recorded an album in '99. That was the first Outside Pedestrian album. not much longer after that, I graduated from undergraduate school and I went into postgraduate. And then I really had to disconnect from music at that point, even as a semi-professional, we'll call it semi-professional musician at that point during undergraduate. It really had to take a full back seat once I started graduate school. So I had to stop playing with those guys. And then here we are 20 years later, and we just connected online, and I just loosely reached out and hey, we should do something, man. We should play something and re-record it or whatever. And it was coming up on we had just passed the 20th anniversary of the release of the first album. And then I think David Lockeretz, the bass player, said, "Oh, we should re-release one or two of the songs, like re-record them virtually and re-release them." And then the other member of the founder of the band, Anthony Fesmire, the guitarist, was obviously on board right away. And then that was it. Like within a couple of days, there was charts, and there was, we collected everything together, and David and Anthony, sent their parts through, and I sat down, I laid it down. I'd never worked with GoPros before. Like all of this was so new to me. And so I virtually, boom, I recorded the song and I sent it back to them, and they liked the tracks. They loved the tracks. They even re-recorded what they had sent me based on what I had played. And boom, the first thing that I did that felt like I was back wasn't even live.
The irony, right? You're like, you
so
want to just
crazy.
get back on a stage somewhere, you used to the 80s, the 90s, LA, getting on those stages and absolutely killing it. And like you say, even through your hiatus, you've got the worship options and opportunities, but you're like, no, feeling beats playing virtually. All right, okay, it's like a different. I'm vibing it. It must have been
the first thing back
it
was,
unbelievable, right?
All concrete bomb shelter. That was my first thing back. Very weird, man. Very weird. So crazy.
Talk to me about that, Steve, because I feel like we've really not covered that. I already mentioned that, you've got this incredible home in Columbus, Ohio, and where did the thought of building this studio come around and come about? Where did that origin begin?
So when my wife and I bought the house, we had just come back from the UK. We were probably 6 months after we had come back from the UK, somewhere around there. We were looking at the homes, and when we looked at this one, my wife is an architect, so she can identify something that's unique and a home that has character very, very quickly. And she really liked this home, and the mid-century aspect of it was really attractive to her. And as we walked through the house, we eventually made our way into the basement, and there's a finished part of the basement where I am now, and a lot of the mixing equipment is here in this room. And then we walked further into the unfinished part of it, and it was divided by this wall of CMU, this brick wall. There was an opening. There was no door, but there was a wall. And I was like, what's back there? And we walked in, and it was empty. There was nothing there. Just at first, you would just think it's another section of the unfinished part of the basement. And then my wife noticed that the ceiling is concrete. The ceiling is CMU also. And I'm thinking, what? She's like, "Steve, this is a bomb shelter." Like, she's connecting it all, mid-century home, post-World War II. And she said, "Steve, this is a bomb shelter." And I was, "Oh man, we could put the drums in here." So all it was just, I need a place for my drums. That was it. So I built a stage, I just put pallets together and put plywood on top of it and built a riser, because I didn't want them on the ground. But I didn't want them on the ground because the sump pumps in the corner. If the basement floods, I don't want it to ruin my drums. It had nothing to do with tone.
God forbid.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with resonance, none of that, and so I just used it. That's where I played. That's where I practiced. And then and that was 2015. So we're still 5 years away from COVID. Then here we go. Like that hit, and we had talked about, like, it'd be an interesting space and it'd be cool to do this or that. And we talked about it just like moving it and making it a music room. My wife plays piano. She's an incredible singer. So we thought maybe we just, pick up an electric piano and move some things in here and just make it a music room. And then COVID hit, and it was a full shutdown, and I just toyed with it. And I had a few friends that were doing some remote recording and stuff like that, and I was dabbling on checking some stuff out on YouTube. And I've always been super, super interested in engineering, audio engineering. I thought, what if we took a look at this, and then just the cost of getting started wasn't a lot. I didn't go buy high-end mics right away. I bought entry level AKG drum mic setup, and that's the way I started, and pulled some stuff together just to learn, understand, how do you first get just a really clean drum tone, raw take? How do you get really great tones? And you mess with the position of the drums in the room, but now I got brick everywhere. Like, it's a super resonant room, really, really resonant room. And the more I looked at it, you get a lot of great quality low end from cement, from CMU. So some people like it even more than a wooden, plywood and drywall type of room. They like it more, but I couldn't control the tone in there because it was so loud. And that's where it started. I was like, all right, now how do I control tone in here? And we just started putting things up, and a lot of it was moving blankets and things that we could just, where if we put stuff in places, where will it really start to, taste up the tone in here? And that's what we did. And then the first thing that came through was the virtual performance with Outside Pedestrian, and I was like, oh, let's lay this down and see what this sounds like, because you really don't know until somebody else puts it in their DAW and says, dude, your tone was great. And then my own perfectionism, you end up saying, yeah, but I could have done this better, and you start just messing with the room, and next thing you know, I'm in a place where I was like, all right, the room's good, now I need mics. And then and then you go down the line thousands of dollars later, and you're buried in being a recording artist at that point. And so that's kind of, that's the way it transitioned, and the room kind of took a life of its own. I thought it was, a cool concept that you got a music studio inside a bomb shelter. So I thought, let's ride it out. That's what I named the company. And it's really me. It's not a company, it's me. But I thought it'd be clever and a cool way of really characterizing the tones and characterizing the idea behind what you get. If we record for you, you'll get a really great tone that's really unique. It's unique to be able to get the tones that you get and control them the way we can control them. But at the same time, I can move and open up the moving blankets. Like, if I want the tone, if I want the resonance, I can make it a huge sound in there, unbelievably huge sound.
I think what you've got to offer, Steve, super unique. Just on that, the ability to do that and to control that. I mean, you've spent the time not just to invest in the equipment, but really to understand the room itself you're working in.
Right.
And I think that it's, again, I think a lot of engineers just go into a studio environment, and the first thing they're drawn to is the workstation, or is the equipment, the equipment we literally bring in, not so much the room itself as a blank canvas. And I think you really understanding that is what really gives you the edge. And kind of, I can see that high performance aspect of, your background kind of playing into this, in terms of, I need to understand every inch of this room, because I really feel like that is something unique that you offer, that a lot of people you can't build a bomb shelter the way that they were built. You can't replicate that. You can put a good shot, shot in doing it, but you're not going to get that same outcome. You've got that in your home. I mean, you literally, your walk to work is 10 steps. Like, it is
10 steps. That's right.
It's a very exciting position to be in. And I mean, come on, mid-century, I can understand it. You've come from England, you see all the beautiful architecture, you want something quite similar. I get it.
It's a character, but exactly. I was just trying to replicate England. Right. That's right. That's all I was trying to do.
I love it. Yeah. I see the fireplace. I know what you're about.
It was tough. It was about trying to get, like, the toughest thing was trying to, what if I need a super tight sound?
Yeah.
So you have two options. If I did what needed to be done to make the room super tight, then I lost the option of making the room big. So the tough thing was, like, I don't want anything permanent. I don't want it permanent because the tone was so big if you open everything up. And that's where it became, my wife Tracy really helped me do it, because there's on the right hand side, going down what would be the east side of the shelter, it's all CMU, but it was back in the day, it was bowing because of the pressure of being in the basement and all the dirt and all the ground movement. So there's these huge steel beams, massive steel beams, probably like six of them, because you have to structurally make the room sound. but it also provided a buttress. So she said, what if we hang shower rods, and you can hang the moving blankets on the shower rods, but now you can open the moving blanket or close it. So she sewed a loop, and we put the shower rods through it, and we connect the shower rods in between the metal beams. And now when I want to open it and make it big, that's where I can expose all the CMU, or I can close it. I did need to take a lot of foam and foam the beams, because you're getting this really harsh vibration off the metal beam. So I had to control all that. But then once I want a big tone, I remember that I was messing around with a friend's song, nothing that went public, just something he wanted to do for himself, but he wanted a really, really big sound. So I opened everything up and I played it, and he loved it. I said, man, I can make this even bigger. And he was like, yeah, because I'm playing through a 22-inch bass drum. So I wanted a 24-inch bass drum for a while anyway. So because of his song, I went and picked up a great, like, it's probably a 1980, 83 Tama Superstar maple kick drum. Great. And I'm a Tama guy, so I wanted to keep it in the family. And I put that thing in there. I re-recorded the song, and the tone from that bass drum was massive in that room. But it was because I could lean into what the room was. I wasn't going to try to massively change it, because I felt like I could just be exactly like everybody else and have the super tight tone, and that's it. Or I could try to make this room super dynamic and be able to try to do both. And I think I'm getting closer. I can still create, like right now, to get that ultimate tightness. You know, the gaff tape, my best friend, the gaff tape is out, and I'm doing some work with that. But in the end, the room is amazing. Like it's been great experience to get it done. You know, we have to be creative. A lot of the paintings that I have in the room, if you watch any of the clips that I have on the YouTube channel from the room, what you don't know is all of those paintings, all those canvases, I turned them into sound baffles. So behind it, but it's a cool way of, creating this really cool aesthetic in the room. But not having this sound baffle that's just, with gray or whatever color material I have over it, but it's just really cool painting. Because I like art, and I want to have more art in the room, but to do it, I'm creatively being able to cover these areas and start to tighten up the room a little bit, and then just foam the backside of the canvas and turn it into a sound baffle. And that's been super cool. Yeah.
I love that kind of dual purpose aspect of, what you've been doing. So no, 100%. I think it's so easy. And I think we live in a throwaway age where a lot of people would see, this incredible blank canvas of a bomb shelter of all things, to walk in. I can imagine it was like, let's close today, no contingencies. Well, as long as the bomb shelter isn't touched, between now and when we close. But, I think hearing this, I think a lot of people would have just gone in there, completely redesigned it, redone it, modified it, brought things down, changed the rooms, took away that tone. Right. And, you're just in any other room. And the fact that you're literally leveraging every aspect of it, Steve, I think it's what makes, your offering extremely unique. Again, for anyone who wants to find out more, go over to bombshelterbeats.com, at bombshelterbeats on social media as well. Steve, I mean, as we begin to wrap up today's conversation, and I've loved every aspect of this. And again, there's so much to cover. It's just unbelievable. You've had such an incredible journey. When it comes to goals, what from a high performance perspective, what do you look for when it comes to creating your own goals? And what are those big milestones you want to hit out on this year over the next few months as we kind of run up to the summer now?
Yeah, I think I've been really fortunate, Carlton, that post World Cup, we were able to transition as a family, and I was just able to remove myself from full-time professional sport. It's pretty fatiguing, not only myself, but it's fatiguing on the family. And so we're now in transition of really solidifying an environment where I can continue to consult full-time from home and create now a dynamic where I'm here in a present way, where I can start to lean into music the way I really, really want to lean into music. So, we're talking about the fact that I'm back from this hiatus, and yes, COVID did that, but I still had the second half of the cycle to get through and the World Cup to complete. So really, I've only been totally transitioned and full circle out of hiatus for 2 months, right? 2-3 months. So now
Woo!
it's about,
It's
yeah, I
official.
know, right? Exactly.
Congratulations. Awesome
Yeah, I
stuff.
appreciate that. So the goal is solidify, the transition into high performance consulting. So I'm
Yeah.
here. And then my first thing is I want to now produce my own recording. So that'll be the goal for the year. I think for me, I still want to. There's plenty of room and bandwidth for me to be a part of other people's projects still. Uh, I'll never turn that away. I'm a drummer. Somebody wants, me to participate in their projects, which I think is such a humbling thing for somebody to ask you to trust you with their art. I think that's an incredible gesture by somebody to reach out and say, hey, I think you have value and I trust you with this. That's super cool. But really I'm writing now to really be able to probably something in the area of a 4 to 6 song EP and really put the project together. I'm creating a group that I'm gonna call the Troublemakers, and we'll be hopefully playing some gigs real soon. So if I finish the end of the year and I was pretty close to finishing an EP, and I had either played a couple of gigs or I was ready to play gigs with my new band, the Troublemakers, I think that would be a really, really successful 2023. That's probably where I'm at. In addition to that, if I can, if I can be a part of a few, projects where I get to just record a couple of really great songs, I would love to be a part of a couple of projects where, someone say, when someone sends you something, even if it's not, even if the intent is to never for
Yeah.
it to be released, but you go, man, that's a great song. I want to be on that song. If I can
Yeah.
finish the year with a handful of those, and one step closer to playing to making some trouble, and then and really and maybe having some of my own original material out in the ecosystem, then I think that would be a really successful 2023, man.
Agreed. The more trouble, the better. Make a
Yeah,
good trouble.
yeah.
I have to ask because these artists are gonna hold me up if I don't. As an
Yeah,
endorsed artist, Steve, you've been with us now. I think
yeah,
right around that length of time where you've been official. Last few months, certainly.
yeah,
Official with us as an endorsed artist. How has your
yeah.
experience been? And when it comes to drumsticks, what is it about your particular size and brand? What is it
Yeah.
that makes you keep coming back for more? And why involve yourself with Collision?
Yeah, a couple of things, man. Like it's I'm a very pocket player. You're not going to see videos of me, um, you know, challenging the Dave Weckels or the Vinny Colaiutas of the world. You won't see me doing that. But feel is, for me is number one, and I would say that characterizes me as a player. Like I really value being musical, but I am a very much a feel and pocket type of player. And I've always gravitated towards sticks that are a little bit more head heavy, um, um, in their imbalance, because again, I have to make up for, like I said earlier, the inefficiency of my left hand. If I've got something that's a little bit more front heavy, I can tend to get a little bit more speed out of my hand. I can tend to get a little bit better feel when it's that way. And in this, the first time I played with the sticks, like that's what I noticed right away. And pretty much I fall in that 5A category more often than not. If I'm playing a bigger show, which I haven't had the chance to do in ages, I would probably go to 5B if I was playing, a bigger venue. But for the venues that I'm playing, it's perfect. And if I do start playing smaller stuff, I've played 7As before. I'll probably dabble in playing 7As if it calls for that here in the near future. But for the most part, I started with the 5As, and they just had this really great little natural, front tip imbalance to it that I really liked. And then that gravitated towards continuing interest in conversations with you about the endorsement process. And then once I got my hands on the 5ARs, it really sparked my interest because I like long sticks. I think the 5As by themselves are longer than industry standard 5As anyway. I was a Vader guy for a while, played Vader sessions for a while, and these replaced that because they feel better to me. And then once I got the 5ARs, it's even longer stick. I was so happy with that. I played ages ago. I used to play the Jack DeJohnette's. I loved those sticks because they were so long. but the feel that I get from these sticks is so great. And so now majority of what I'm playing when I play, 5A's, either the regular or the ebony. I love, and that's the second part of this, is I love the aesthetic of an ebony stick. They look beautiful. And once Collision started making the ebony option, I was all in. I love that. And then the 5AR is just when I want a longer stick, and that's really what I want for the song. Like, they're perfect. Yeah. So I've really enjoyed them. I think they're super durable. And in the end, for me, it was all about feel. I wasn't going to make it about anything other than that, just because I don't have a lot of flash, and technically I need help. I think I've still continued to improve as a technical player, but in terms of chops, but as it relates to just feel and pocket, I felt really, really at home with the sticks. I dig them. Yeah.
I really appreciate that kind of never finished attitude. And I think the fact that, you again feel like you obtain that and get that feel, what you're looking for. Again,
yeah,
you're not someone flashy, Steve. You want the best sticks and the best tools for your craft. And I think after 40 years of finding that, you deserve nothing less. So, we're just very proud to be the brand to back you, always in your corner, and to support you in that effort and that pursuit. We have one final part and tradition, Steve, as part of the drum club, and that is, you know it better than most as a Collision endorsee. Our slogan is "Impact Your Sound." 3 very important words, meaning, very important things to drummers, but what does it mean to you as a drummer to impact your sound, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, we've never talked about this, Carlton. So I just want everybody out there to know that this wasn't scripted. But to be honest, even in my consulting business, the number one aspect, the number one value that I place in our mission statement is that I don't want to get involved in any situation where I can't have an impact. To be honest, I think impact is such an integral part of what satisfies us as human beings. We talked about the connection spiritually to other individuals is what we survive on, but at the same time, it's not just about connecting. I think we thrive on connecting with situations where we actually have positive impacts on them. And it's amazingly coincidental, to be honest, because they do impact my sound. The sticks do impact my sound, because if I feel good on the kit, then I'm going to be able to live my mission, right? And the Bomb Shelter Beats 3 Ps are passion, pocket, purpose. But purpose, as it relates to my mission as a player, is about the purpose of having an impact. And I touched on it earlier. I do think it's an incredibly humbling situation to have somebody say, here's my art, and I'm inviting you to be a part of that. But they're doing it because they think you can have an impact on it. They don't want it to. I haven't met many people that just goes, I just need a drummer. I just need a drum part. Like, nobody does that. Nobody does that with any instrument. They're reaching out to you because they're like, okay, I'm going to take a chance on you, to be honest, if they haven't worked with you before. But something about you, something about what I've seen from your playing in the past tells me that you can have an impact on the way the song is going to finish. And that impact is going to get it closer to the way I want it to impact people when it's released. Like, all that is incredibly tied together. So yeah, I mean, I it's a super cool statement, a vision statement from the company, because I think it's so personal. It's a very, very personal thing to say that my goal is to have a positive impact on people. And I think, it lives up to it, and it's helping me live up to it for sure.
Well, I appreciate, everything that you have come into the brand, shaping already, what we're about to do in efforts going forward, Steve. I think this is by far one of our longest podcasts, but I think it's been one of the most effortless as well. Great. Because, we get on so well, and 2, I just think when it comes to, your journey and history as a drummer, I think it just speaks for itself. So I really want to say from me and the team, thank you for being a part of our roster. You've already mentioned throughout, how incredible, it is for you to work with so many different artists, and what an honor and privilege is all ours. And we feel the same way. We're very thrilled that, you were working and choosing to work with us. And, that's a big responsibility on my part. Again, a bit into my background is, as someone who was going to pursue the world and career of law. I was going to become a barrister or a solicitor, depending on what we do over here in the UK. It was one was with a wig, one was without. And for me, it was, my pursuit was actually supporting, people
Right.
who, like me, like yourself, drummers around the world, of all background, faith, religion,
Sure.
race, that's to me what it's always been about. And if we can help one more drummer, that next new drummer, that's a job well done, Steve. And I think we've
Absolutely.
done a lot today and more. I think we've accomplished a lot today, hopefully a lot for the artist to take away with. What an incredible session. And you've been lucky and fortunate to join us on this. So if you've enjoyed today's conversation, guys, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Steve, you are the absolute man. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pin all of your links below as well. Is there any other links that we are missing that we haven't already given direction to, or where that, that you want to kind of draw notice to, that the artists can support you? Because I really want you to come out with this with opportunities, and again, the opportunity to connect with some of the artists who are watching this as well, because they're the stakeholders and the beneficiaries at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, I think the main link is the website for sure, bombshelterbeats.com. And then, I post quite a bit. A majority of what I post will go to either my YouTube channel, and you can find me on YouTube at Bombshelterbeats on YouTube, and same thing on Instagram at Bombshelterbeats on Instagram. And then I've started to have more activity on LinkedIn as well. And I have two accounts on LinkedIn, so make sure you search for the one. It'll be clear. One's about high performance, and one's about music. It'll be clear which one to gravitate to. And those are the main avenues. But if there's any confusion whatsoever, you can get to all of them through the website, through bombshelterbeats.com. And we're getting ready to freshen it up with new content. The website is still pretty much filled with things that we put up there within the first year of the business. So luckily, I've got some new content that we can put up and refreshing up the website a little bit. But that would be the way to get to a central point where you can get to the rest. But yeah, it's much appreciated for those that can jump on there and give me some feedback on what you think and where we're at and what you think of the space and the room and the tones we're getting from there. We'd love the feedback, love to connect with anybody.
100%. And I encourage everyone to get over there before the update happens, because you get to see the original, the authentic, the V1 version. And I think that's awesome. Every brand has its story, and I've loved what I've seen on that site. So I'm sat literally even before today's episode, and I'm on it again, and I'm going, gosh, this is incredible. I mean, and obviously, when you posted your original video for the arts profile, seeing you do Rosanna, from the studio, I'm like, this is what it means to be a drummer, and this is what it means to run and operate the brand, because I get to see incredible artists like you do your thing. So no, more power to you. Please go support Steve, and we look forward to supporting you going forward, Steve, and many more conversations come. We'll have to do this again sometime soon, okay?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Carlton. Really appreciate it, man. Thank you, everybody out there.
Cheers, everyone watching. See you next episode. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to subscribe.